Nonviolence section. The role of leader in Lenin's party and Gandhi's party. Parties whose activists are called upon to risk persecution and death need a resolute, energetic leadership. This was sought in Lenin's party via democratic centralism, thanks to which a restricted central group was invested or regarded itself as invested by the base with full powers. Historically, it has frequently turned out that, as a result of the gravity and persistence of a state of emergency, a charismatic, autocratic leader has ended up triumphing. In Gandhi's party, by contrast, religious charisma was the formal criterion of the leader's legitimation and consecration. On the occasion of the Salt March, he was acclaimed thus, "Hail, Deliverer." At the Mammoth meetings, where, in those pre-microphone days, many would be content just to have a glimpse of the Mahatma, the Great Soul, as the acknowledged and venerated leader was now called. People kneeled before him, and even tried to throw themselves at his feet. Churchill was not wrong when he observed on the 12th of March 1931 that Gandhi enjoyed quasi-divine status among his followers. Virtually at the same time, in the African-American press, which was decidedly sympathetic to the Indian leader, one could read that he had a tendency to appoint himself dictator of civil disobedience. This judgment converges with that formulated by the Hindu fundamentalist fanatic, Nathuram Godse, who was convinced that in Gandhi he had killed a leader guilty of having exercised, quote, undisputed dictatorship. Quote, when he finally returned to India, he developed a subjective mentality under which he alone was to be the final judge of what was right or wrong. If the country wanted his leadership, it had to accept his infallibility, or 30 years of undisputed dictatorship. End quote. Indeed, even within his own party, Gandhi, quote, was accused of aspiring to a moral dictatorship, end quote, and the charges were not unfounded. The leader, quote, himself had no official role in the organization, but this very fact helped him over the years to strengthen his position in Congress, for he was not subject to too many rules, end quote. Even Gandhi's, quote, resignation from formal membership of the Congress Party in 1934 did not result in any lessening of his power in the organization, end quote. This was the context for various fasts undertaken not against the colonial power, but against sections of the Indian people and the independence movement and party, inclined to call into question the leader's religious charisma. Over and above a resolute, energetic leadership, a party of struggle pursuing ambitious objectives of social transformation in a situation of acute or grave crisis needs militants and followers disposed to undertake disciplined, organized political activity. This applies to the party of Lenin, but also, and to a no less great extent, to the party of Gandhi. The latter called upon all Indians to be courageous and to persevere so as to merit the title of brave pioneers. Indeed, quote, everyone must sacrifice his own interests in order to safeguard those of the community, uphold his honor and its good name, end quote. It was not only a question of achieving external firmness. Without letting itself be fettered by religious differences, the nation must achieve heart unity and act as one mind. Those who abstained from the unanimous struggle for independence against the colonial power must find themselves dropping out from the public life of the country, which calls upon every man and woman in India to do their full share. In the light of all this, we can readily understand the judgment formulated by a historian journalist who, in the columns of the most prestigious organs of the U.S. and Western press generally, has engaged in celebrating the return of colonialism, quote, colonialism's back and not a moment too soon. He has had this to say of Gandhi, quote, He was a year older than Lenin, with whom he shared a quasi-religious approach to politics, though in sheer crankiness he had much more in common with Hitler, his junior by 20 years. End quote from Paul Johnson. The use of completely formal categories makes it possible to compare the Indian leader, a major actor in the anti-colonial liberation movement, with the Führer engaged in resuming and radicalizing the colonial tradition, who was so full of admiration for imperialist Great Britain that he defined the colonial empire he proposed to build in Eastern Europe as the, quote, German Indies, end quote. More reasonable, obviously, is comparing Gandhi with Lenin, without whom it would not be possible to understand the development of the anti-colonialist movement on a world scale. But when it is made on the basis not of the category of anti-colonialism, but that of, quote, totalitarianism, a key point is lost from view. When they were in opposition, Gandhi's party and Lenin's party took the form on the one hand of a church, called upon to inspire and charge up its followers, and on the other of an army, organizing and supervising vast popular masses in overthrowing the ancien regime. Hence, they cannot be compared with normal bourgeois parties, which delegate the ideological religious function to the church proper, or appropriate ideological apparatuses, and the military function to special armed bodies. It must never be forgotten that on occasions of acute crisis, the phenomena regarded as typical of totalitarianism, a Manichaean vision of political struggle, the centralization and personalization of power, the appeal for popular unanimity, with a consequent tendency to denounce dissidents as enemy agents, manifested themselves in the classical countries of the liberal tradition. End of section.